The atrocities of October 7th, Hamas attacks, they're just beginning of the brutality. A Hamas official says the terrorists won't stop until Israel is destroyed.
Israeli members of parliament were moved to tears after watching raw footage of the brutalities against their people. And yet, President Biden has joined international calls for Israel to pause its offensive in Gaza. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
For the first time since the war began, foreign nationals, including Americans, are getting out of Gaza. The U.S. State Department is helping the U.S. citizens there.
In the past 24 hours, we have informed U.S. citizens and their family members with whom we are in contact that they will be assigned specific departure dates.
The State Department says there are about 1,000 American citizens and family members in the Gaza Strip.
Working nonstop to get Americans out of Gaza as soon and as safely as possible. This is the result of intense and urgent American diplomacy with our partners in the region.
President Joe Biden also called for a humanitarian pause in the fighting. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is departing for Israel and Jordan Thursday as international criticism of Israel builds. Jordan recalled its ambassador, and some are concerned the U.S. will ask Israel to stop its ground campaign. On the ground, the Israeli military announced it's at the gates of Gaza City. Soldiers and tanks are seen in this Israeli Defense Forces video as operations intensify inside Gaza. The IDF says dozens of Hamas targets, including observation posts, anti-tank squads and launchers, vessels and military outposts, have been destroyed. Israeli leaders are warning this new phase of the war will be long and difficult. The IDF also released this conversation showing Hamas taking fuel for its war machine from a Gaza-based Indonesian hospital. Turkey and Iran's foreign ministers met Wednesday in a show of solidarity. Iran's foreign minister says the region is on the brink.
Undoubtedly, if the war isn't stopped immediately, the United States of America, the fake regime of Israel, and the supporters of the continuation of the war crimes will be directly responsible for the situation in the region getting out of hands.
Some 240 people, including Americans, are still being held hostage by Hamas. A Hamas official in Lebanon declared they would repeat October 7th. He said, Israel is a country that has no place on our land. We must remove that country because it constitutes a security, military, and political catastrophe to the Arab and Islamic nation and must be finished. We are not ashamed to say this with full force. It is Israel, not us. We are the victims of the occupation, period. Therefore, nobody should blame us for the things we do. On October 7th, October 10th, October 1,000,000th, everything we do is justified. On Wednesday, members of Israel's Knesset watched the raw footage from the October 7th massacre. Many left the auditorium overwhelmed and weeping. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Flor Hassan Nahum is the deputy mayor of Jerusalem. She joins us now from our bureau there. So we're hearing President Biden, he's supporting a humanitarian pause in the fight against Hamas in Gaza. What's Israel's response to that?
Well, I think that what they understand in Gaza as a humanitarian pause and what we understand as regular people who keep law and who have humanity is very different. Even the ex-Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said 2 days ago that a humanitarian pause is not a good idea, a ceasefire is not a good idea, because Hamas, who have been stealing food and fuel from their own people, will simply use that moment to rearm, to re-strengthen themselves, and to keep attacking. You've already heard the words of different Hamas officials. So why would any country give a humanitarian pause when you're dealing with people who don't understand what humanitarian rights are?
How severe is the public perception, the international perception? I'm hearing lots of different reports that the international court's coming in talking about war crimes. You're hearing it from the UN Secretary General. How is that received in Israel?
I think the world is very confused because there's a difference between war and war crimes. War crimes are when you go purposefully to torture and to kill innocent civilians. War is when a country defends itself and attacks and tries to do everything it can in order to protect their citizens. Israel is not committing war crimes because we warn people ahead of time, which, by the way, I don't think any country has ever done, and we actually are out to kill the Hamas terrorists, not innocent people. Now, are there civilian casualties that happen in war? Absolutely. War is ugly, but it doesn't mean that this is a war crime. We are allowing humanitarian aid to come in. We've let 100 trucks of humanitarian aid every single day, which is actually more than the other side are doing, who are not even giving us any type of proof of life or any type of assurance that our 230 hostages, amongst them 5-month-old babies and 85-year-old elderly people with dementia, are getting any type of assistance. We even don't know if they're alive at this point. And so I think that if Israel is outstretching its hand to the innocent civilians of the Gaza Strip with the humanitarian aid, as we've opened up the crossing of Rafah, the least they could do is give us some type of information, of proof of life, of medical assistance to our 230-plus hostages.
Tomorrow is a significant day. The head of Hezbollah is going to have a major speech. Are you anticipating that there'll be yet another front in this war?
Well, I think that there was a big plan here, Iranian plan, because they're behind everything. They're the big puppet masters. And essentially, Hamas in Gaza is a proxy, as is Hezbollah, as is Syria. They've completely destroyed Lebanon. They're in Afghanistan through the Taliban and Iraq and, of course, Qatar and Turkey. And so this is the big plan of Iran, which includes, at some point, getting to the free world, including the United States of America. So I don't have many expectations of the arch-terrorist leader of Hezbollah. He has been essentially pricking Israel, but not really starting a full-out war. So perhaps he's announcing there's going to be a war. And at that point, I think it'll be very useful. And the United States of American government have been extremely supportive. They understand that this could conflagrate into a regional war. And America has already picked a side, thank God. And they themselves are being attacked by Iranians at this point. So this could conflagrate into a regional war.
Let's talk about that regional war and particularly the threats coming out of Turkey that they're going to send troops to Gaza. They're calling for ceasefire. What would happen in a regional conflict if a member of NATO, Turkey, a member of NATO, gets involved in this war?
Well, I think that promptly, I would hope, they would get kicked out of NATO because Turkey really hasn't decided who it is and what it wants yet. On the one hand, they're constantly flirting with the West. They wanted to be part of the European Union at one point. They joined NATO. But on the other hand, they harbor fundamentalists. They harbor terrorists. They've completely ruined any type of freedom of speech, free press. So they eventually will have to pick a side. Knowing Erdogan, who is very much connected to the Muslim Brotherhood, he may pick the side of evil. And if he does, then I believe that the member states of NATO have a difficult decision to make. And I hope, with the guidance of the United States, they will kick them out.
What about even a bigger conflict? Iran supplied weapons to Russia that are currently being used in Ukraine. Azerbaijan, what they're doing in Armenia. Could Russia get involved? Hamas just recently, like yesterday, met in Moscow. Is that an even bigger concern that we could see not just the region, but Russia get involved?
Absolutely. Russia has made the most horrible statements, even yesterday at the UN, putting all the blame on Israel for an attack that we didn't start, that was unprovoked, for a massacre that they haven't recognized yet. Russia doesn't have any values. They don't really have any type of moral compass. They will go for what's good for them. And at the moment, allying themselves with the forces of evil in Iran is good for them because they've been isolated by the United States, the West, and Europe. And so they're just picking whatever side is good for them. They have skin in the game. They're in northern Syria, in southern Syria. And so this could definitely be the start of a third world war. I don't want to be the angel of doom here, but it only takes a few wrong moves by the dangerous players in this region for this to become something really much wider.
What can people who do have a moral compass, you're talking to a lot of Christians right now. I know you meet often with Christian groups in Jerusalem. How can the Christian community, not just here in the United States, not just in Europe, but around the world, how can we stand with you at this time?
Well, first of all, I have so much love and appreciation for our Christian friends from all around the world. I get messages every single day. People in the Christian world are not confused. They understand what evil is, and they understand what good is, and which side Israel and the United States are on. So firstly of all, I have great appreciation. But I think there's something very practical the Christian world could help us with, and that is pressurizing the Red Cross to do the right thing. 2 days ago, the Israel Prison Authority got a letter from the Red Cross where they were concerned about the terrorist prisoners that are in Israeli jails. Now, the Red Cross have had zero contact with the Israeli hostages, like I said, amongst them 5-month-old babies, elderly people, women being raped, nothing. They have not pressurized Hamas to let them go and see, even give us proof of life. They've done nothing. Now, I know the Red Cross today is not a Christian organization, but it was originally a Christian enterprise. And so if the Christian world can help us pressurize the Red Cross not to choose terrorists over innocent civilians, young babies and elderly, and help us with the hostages to help us get proof of life, to help us get the medical assistance, because some of them may be dying just from being injured. That's, I think, something very practical that the Christian world could help us with today.
Well, thank you. That's very practical, and we will endeavor to do that. Deputy Mayor, thank you for being with us, and we stand with you, and we pray for you, and we know that you're going to be strong and courageous in the months, the days, the weeks coming ahead. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
If you want to do that very thing, the Red Cross has chapters across America. They were founded in Switzerland about a century and a half ago. The reason it has a Red Cross is they were a Christian organization. They've moved away from that, but that symbol is still there, and we need to remind them of what that symbol means. So let's do that. You can contact your local branch. You can. There are all a bunch of state chapters. There's national chapters, international. Let's do our part to say, no, you don't get to do this. You don't get to pick this side. What about what's happening to those hostages in Gaza? Well, in recent years, Israel has made historic progress with its Arab neighbors. Since the war broke out, concern is growing that the Abraham Accords could be derailed, and you've heard that on the 700 Club out of me, that I wondered, was it, that's the first casualty of the war, and one of the attempts by Hamas is to stop Saudi Arabia from joining in with it. But we've got some good news. One Arab nation that has established diplomatic relations with Israel has condemned Hamas and says the accords are here to stay. CBN Capitol Hill correspondent Matt Galka reports.
There's still optimism that the Abraham Accords can lead to long-term stability in the region and potentially expand even as the war escalates. The Abraham Accords celebrated its third anniversary in September. The U.S. brokered treaty involving Israel, Bahrain, and the UAE set a goal for expanding diplomatic relations between Israel and Arab nations. The Biden administration continued talks between Israel and Saudi Arabia, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressing the budding relationship at the UN in late September.
I believe that we are at the cusp of an even more dramatic breakthrough, an historic peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Such a peace will go a long way to ending the Arab-Israeli conflict. It will encourage other Arab states to normalize their relations with Israel. It will enhance the prospects of peace with the Palestinians.
3 weeks later, Hamas attacks on Israel shook the region and the world. Speaking in Saudi Arabia, Jared Kushner defended the importance of the accords in the wake of the attacks, accusing Hamas of trying to upend the stability the accords created.
In light of the attack, the Abraham Accords are more important than ever. Israel has to have the security to not be threatened by its neighbors and to be able to protect its citizens. That is absolutely crucial, is non-negotiable, and I do think a lot of the world agrees that that's something that should exist. The second element is that the Palestinian people have to have the opportunity to live a better life. And I think that if you go through the element, it's not just saying let's create a state, it has to be a state that can function and thrive, because if you don't create that, then the people will, again, find ways to blame other people instead of the leadership that's putting it there.
The war with Hamas has delayed normalization efforts with Saudi Arabia, one of the most influential countries in the Arab world. Former Israeli Interior Minister Ayelet Shaked says the prospect for expanded peace with Saudi Arabia remains strong.
We need to understand the reality in the Middle East. I think that currently, as we see, the process was put on hold, but I assume that after the war, we can, renew the process. And I hope that soon we will have a peace agreement with Saudi. It's the interest of the U.S., Saudi, and Israel.
Iran remains a destabilizer in the region, potentially trying to upend any expanded peace talks between Israel and other Arab nations.
The Iranians saw that, knew what that would mean. It would basically mean the end or the beginning of the end of the Arab-Israeli conflict more broadly, which means greater unity and stability on that side of the Gulf, which poses a great danger to the Islamic Republic of Iran, which has every interest in destabilizing.
The UAE became the first Arab country to directly condemn Hamas, and this week one official released a statement saying that the accords are here to stay, despite the UAE's criticism of certain Israeli military tactics. Matt Gelka, CBN News.
Well, I hope this message has broad appeal in the Arab world, that when you recognize Israel, you come to peace, then you bring regional stability, you bring progress, you bring economic breakthroughs. It would be wonderful to see. The trade relations between the UAE and Israel have been wonderful. The UAE has certainly benefited from that. Saudi Arabia could benefit from it as well. So could Egypt and Jordan. But they have to come to grips with peace with Israel. Now, Jordan and Egypt have signed peace agreements. Now, UAE is recognizing. Under international law, Israel has a right to exist. When you hear these calls from Hamas, from Hezbollah, from the river to the sea, when you see people marching, when you hear people say Israel is some kind of occupying power, no, they're not. The UN said yes and recognized Israel's right to exist. It was all part of international law, going back to the British mandate, to the League of Nations. But part of it was establishing a homeland for the Jewish people, that they had a right to exist. They had a right to determine their own future. Let's stand with them, and let's hope that peace breaks out throughout the region, that this horror that has been unleashed would lead to that, would be a wonderful thing. So let us pray for that. Let's pray that all things will work together for good for them that love God and are called according to his purpose. May people who love God come together on this and say, let's make a difference. Let's bring peace to the region.